Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Knicks Film School Pregame Show. My name is Andrew Claudio, a.k.a. GMAC. It is time to preview another Knicks matchup, this time on Friday night in Cleveland, Ohio, against the Cleveland Cavaliers. The first time the Knicks and Cavs have played since the fifth game of the season. Little did we know that when the Knicks left that game and were defeated by the Cleveland Cavaliers in the game, the Knicks blew late in the fourth quarter. It was a close match. It looked like a potential 4-5 in the first round. Little did we know that was going to be the closest the Cavs would come to losing for the first 16 or 17 games, and that the Cavs would eclipse not just the Knicks, but the Boston Celtics for the 1 seed and potentially are on pace for one of the best records in their franchise history, although we'll see what happens over the final 20 or so games. You know where I had to go to preview this matchup, this potential Eastern Conference Finals preview. That's right. I'll say it. I don't care who's listening in Boston, even though I'm doing a Boston pregame pod tomorrow. Thank you, NBA schedule makers, for a Cavs Celtics back-to-back the first weekend out of the All-Star break. I had to go to my home away from home. And no, Justin is not here because why? With the two hockey teams playing each other, U.S. versus Canada, would I talk to a Canadian right now? I had to go to my brother here in the States, Mr. Carter Rodriguez from the Chase Down podcast, who is making his KFS debut. Carter, welcome to the Knicks Film School pregame show.
Well, it's really nice of you to frame it that way when I just guilt tripped you for always asking Justin to come on ahead of me. And that's the real reason I'm here. Pure unadulterated
I don't know what you're talking about, sir. I went out of my way, if you want to read the DMs from my vacation, where I sent a DM to both of you that this is a message for Carter and only invited. Carter. Yes, I wanted to make sure Justin knew he's not invited to the pregame pod.
I did for a minute. Looking at that, I was like, oh, he's serious. Justin's not invited.
Yes. We do one-on-ones here at Knicks Film School. And I listen, it's love, of course, outside of this hockey game that apparently is relevant now. But of course, it's love to Justin and you guys over at the Chase Down. Admired your work over the last 8-9 years, however long you guys have been doing this. And it's cool that I get to collaborate with you guys, especially when the Knicks play the Cleveland Cavaliers. Bit different circumstance from the past. There was always an equal footing, it seemed like, when the Knicks and Cavs played each other. Obviously, the first big matchup we had against each other was when the Knicks played the Cavs in the first round a couple years ago. Last year, both teams really battling it out for the 2 or the 3 seed, and I guess the 4 seed is what ended up happening. And if my projection going into this season was that these teams were on equal footing, the Cavs decided, at least for the first half of the season, that was far underestimating what they were going to be this season. Let me just ask you, because my listeners just don't know how you felt going into this year. This team is right now the 1 seed. They would have home court throughout the Eastern Conference playoffs. There's still a world where they can have a better record than the Thunder as well. Of your wildest projections, how close to what has happened this year were you to your expectations for this season?
I mean, I thought the upside outcome here was a 60-win team. I really did. I mean, they won 51 2 years ago, the year that they ended up having that a horrific playoff series against your boys. And, they were a pretty flawed team that year, and as the Knicks certainly helped expose. They were young. Their wing rotation was pretty much non-existent. They were they had made that Donovan Mitchell trade so late that it was like they couldn't really start tuning the roster around him at all. They kind of just had to run with what they had. You're kind of seeing that with the Lakers with Luka right now. It's like, well, we made this monumental trade and a roster that is going to take a minute to tune around that monumental trade. I feel like the Cavs, obviously to a lesser extent, had the same problem. Then they make all these additions that kind of help, bolster the rotation, and they're just hurt all year. And it kind of just seemed like it was over with JB with that group as their coach, and they just never hit their stride, and they only win 49 games. But then they run back the roster. They kind of are betting on continuity. They're betting on the team just being healthier. They're betting on a new head coach. And their Vegas over-under was 48.5, which I was like, that's insulting. They had the season from hell last year and they won 49 or 48. I actually don't remember what.
49. Yeah.
So no one's going to fact check me on it, so it's fine. And so, again, I did think that they were going to be a really, really good team, and I thought they had a chance to compete for the 1 seed in the East. But that was more a byproduct of I thought 3 or 4 teams had a chance to be in that 55, 56 win range, and but who could have projected 45-10 through 55 games after they beat the Nets tonight? I mean, who would have predicted one of the best offenses in NBA history from this group? Who would have predicted? You know this. You go through the offseason, you talk through the upsides, the downside outcome. Here's the stuff that we think kind of went bad last year that we hope goes better. Here's the stuff that went good last year that maybe it won't go so good. I just feel like across the board, up and down the roster, every single high-end outcome is being hit. And that's why they're on pace to win 67 games right now.
So there's a couple things at play here, and where I want to go next here. The first thing, to your point about what the team was 2 years ago and how they made that trade very late, and it was going to take a couple of transaction cycles before you could fully build around what the new look Cavs were going to be post Donovan Mitchell trade. It's not just the Lakers that are a team that made a late trade. I've likened the Knicks from this season going through the McHale trade and then the Cat trade the day before training camp to what that Cavs team was 2 years ago. I worry about the Knicks ceiling come playoff time. I do think the Knicks ceiling is a little higher than that Cavs ceiling was, but I also recognize that, I have 6 guys I trust right now, and then maybe Mitchell Robinson, if he could stay healthy, Precious Achiuwa in situations. I like Campaign if he can get hot for 7 minutes. But it really does seem like to build out the rest of this core that's going to go compete for championships the next couple of years, as the Knicks envision. The Cavs model of when we did our pre-games that series against the Cavs in 2022 and 23, we all had
are too cocky.
Well, so you actually said humbled. Cavs in 5. Yes, but
I was humbled.
I remember my analysis being I like the Cavs best 4. I think you have 4 of the 6 or 7 best players in the series. I think the Knicks have 9 of the best 13, though, or 8 of the best 13. And it was a depth play for me. It's now reversed. I like the Cavs. They would have 10 of the best 15 players in this series, maybe 16 with whatever juice is compared to the 11th man of the Cavs. But I've now gotten to a place where I'm just, the other part that's annoying, Carter, is I'm wanting to talk about this game, and we'll obviously break down this game and the matchup. There's a Celtics conversation because of how good you guys are and how we're probably going to have to go through the Celtics to play you, that the only real important Knicks versus Cavs conversation is if we play you in the conference finals this year, which the Knicks would have to slay Goliath, it feels like. So let me ask you that. Do you still consider the Celtics Goliath, even though, as you said, the Cavs are on pace for 67 wins?
Yeah, Justin and I talked on our podcast after they traded for DeAndre Hunter, which is a trade we were both geeked about, from an asset perspective, from an on-court perspective, from an archetype perspective. But we both pretty much agreed there wasn't a transaction out there that was going to make us think this team is just better than Boston now. I think at the end of the day, you have to go prove that. And, we have to see the offense hold up in the postseason again, at each stage. This is a group that has defended at an elite level in the postseason, but never scored at an elite level. So it's just hard, even as a homer and a diehard Cavs fan, to be like, yeah, they're better than this machine that the Boston Celtics have become with all these guys who really challenge and bend your defensive shell and get you to put 2 on the ball, and then the 3-point volume starts coming. So I just don't think I'm there. I am there that I think there are 3 true blue tier 1 contenders in the league right now. The Cavs, the Celtics, and the Thunder. And I do think the Cavs belong in that conversation. I think that they absolutely have a real shot at beating the Boston Celtics in a series. But I'm not going to be like they should be favored. I'm not going to throw a fit about that when the Celtics team is still playing historically good basketball. They're differentials almost +10. and they just won a title,
Yeah.
and aren't playing that well while putting up these kind of numbers.
You said something there that I actually wanted a Cavs fan's perspective on, and you said that they're one of the 3 true blue contenders, and obviously I have my side hustle with game theory, and I pay attention to the national shows, and it does seem like a very common trend in all of these power rankings is that it's Boston and OKC in a tier of their own. And then the Cavs are in a tier of their own. Like, they deserve respect to not be with the Knicks and the Rockets and the Nuggets and the Grizzlies, but they don't get the respect to be with the other 2. What's your reaction when you see that even though they have the second best record in the league and at times had the first best record in the league, they still tend to always be number 3?
Yeah, I get it at the end of the day. And by the way, we have the best record in the league. We have a half game lead on.
Excuse me. Right, so they literally have the best record in the NBA. My bad. I apologize.
Don't sell us short. I had to pull that up just to make sure I wasn't putting my chest out on a lie.
My apologies.
Go ahead. I get it. Here's the thing. I do have like the fan Napoleon complex where I go like, hey, OKC hasn't made it past the second round of the playoffs either. Like they have some weird fit with their best players to figure out. Like we haven't seen them. We haven't seen Chet at the power forward in a playoff series and figuring out how he's going to space the floor and give them enough ball handling juice in those lineups. Like I think they have more questions to answer than the national media would like to acknowledge right now. They are kind of put in a tier of their own, I think, because they have so. I think they almost get like bonus points for how many assets they have, like moving forward for this year. But like the reality is, like, yeah, they're way better situated than any other team. But you still got to win with who you have right now. So I do think they get like that little curve. But at the end of the day, they have the MVP right now, and as good as Donovan has been, as much as Evan and Darius have grown and all that stuff, like I get why you might separate them when you have 2 teams with defensive personalities with these kind of unicorn type young big men in Evan and Chet. But like they have Shea. Everyone pretty much agrees Shea is the first, second, or third best player in the world, and that is going to be a tiebreaker for people. And I understand that. And at the end of the day, like Cavs just need to go win, and people will they'll be put in the group if they win their way into the group.
That's the best way to shut people up is to actually win, And look, not to bring it up again, but I thought the only way the Knicks were gonna be able to shut anybody up, because I don't remember a lot of people picking the Knicks to win that series.
No, it was like a consensus. The Cavs were the hot young team.
Mm-hmm. And I thought, from a depth perspective, again, I thought the Knicks, like that postseason is so weird. I thought the Cavs were probably the second or third best team in that playoffs. Like I know a lot of people had them in conference finals conversation, and then this Miami Heat run happened and got 2 coaches fired and got an entire fan base. Like, remember how I thought Tibbs coached an outstanding series against the Cavs, and nobody remembers it because of what happened against Bolsha and the Heat in the next round.
Yeah, well, I mean, I thought that in so many ways, that's why I find this matchup tomorrow night so interesting. Is that the Knicks in so many ways represented like the worst stylistic matchup for that Cavs team. Mm-hmm. It was a young Cavs team. They had some size, but it's like only in at their 4 and 5, and those guys weren't ready for the physicality of Mitch Robb, weren't ready for the physicality of Hartenstein. Their wings were not great rebounders, and frankly still aren't, if we're really calling a spade a spade. So like every loose ball went Josh Hart's way. And, one of Justin and I's favorite things to talk about is that Brunson did not have a very good series against the Cavs. He was pretty inefficient. The volume wasn't that good. And if you compare his series against Miami, the next round, he cooked Miami. He cooked Miami in a way that he did not even come close to cooking the Cavs. But since the Cavs barely were crossing the 90-point threshold on any given game, every Brunson bucket felt like death.
Yeah. We did as part of summer evergreen content, we came up with a Brunson Hall of Fame, and it's similar to what The Ringer does, where they pick 10 movies for an actor and it's their Hall of Fame. We tried to pick the 10 Brunson games, and none of them are from the Cavs series. And I made the case when people were forgetting how that series went. That wasn't a great Brunson series. And then the Josh Hart Hall of Fame happened, and I brought up. I'm sorry to have to do this to you. I brought up game 1 and the big shot he hit. I brought up the game 4 and how well he played. I agree with you that style that the Knicks play, which is why I think some Knicks fans are looking to Mitchell Robinson returning, and it will be just a return to form that he's the Cavs' kryptonite, and he'll be a secret weapon come playoff time.
9-9 in that series. It's not like he was that insane. He was just the collective, and Hartenstein is the one who absolutely murdered them in that series.
Gravity is a thing, though, and when we're in the fourth quarter of game 4 and both Mobley and Allen are boxing out Mitch, to your point, and then Josh Hart's able to get whatever rebound he wants. Like Tibbs was even allowed to, with a hobbled Julius Randle, like not play him in the fourth quarter of that game in game 4. And like Obi Toppin is getting minutes and is allowed to space the floor and get out in transition.
Come on here and talk about this, bro.
Listen, I have to. Your team's 45-10, and I'm not going to see you in the playoffs most likely. So I have to bring up old memories between the Knicks and the Cavs.
I will say this about thinking about that series, because I was actually thinking about it before I came on. Looking into this, because Dean Wade, Kenny Atkinson just mentioned he is going to play tomorrow night, and he's missed the last 2-3 weeks with an injury. And I looked at it, and in that series, the team's options at the small forward position were Isaac Okoro coming off an injury, Karis LeVert, Jetty Osman, Danny Green, a very, very old Danny Green, and then a also banged up Dean Wade very early in his career. And now their options at that 3 are DeAndre Hunter, Max Strus, Okoro, Wade, and then Jalen Tyson, their rookie. And like that is a very different wing room than they had 2 years ago.
I'll say, yeah, they've made some slight improvements. Which, look, it's the thing to bring it full circle that I have been trying to preach to some Knicks fans, and I think the message from Knicks Film School has been to some Knicks fans that when you come up against these teams that have gone through their transaction cycles and have built out their team a little more than we have, teams aren't supposed to be able to make a trade like the Celtics did last year, the day before training camp, and it builds a championship contender. You make a consolidation trade like that. Yeah, it's supposed to require time after that.
They hit the lottery because Hauser, Pritchard, and Cornette all just were perfect fits with what they needed them to be. And like, there's your depth. Like, I remember like wholeheartedly making the case against Boston last year, man. Like, they got like 5.5 guys, and Horford's old and KP always gets hurt. But like when all 3 of those dudes hit and are like their 140th percentile outcome, it just doesn't matter. But like that's rare, and I don't think either of our teams have had that luxury.
Not yet, at least not yet. The Cavs this year have had a pretty outstanding season and hit close to that outcome. Let me ask you a question personally. Do you cook at all? Do you bake more specifically?
I'm not much of one, but I do like doing it with my kids. It's super fun.
Okay, there you go. Dad of the year over here. I'll say I'm not much of a cook. I can make a mean microwave pizza, but I can heat up a factory meal. Please responsor us so I can get a free sample. I would like to bake a pie with you, if that's all right. And if it's possible, we're going to bake a credit pie for what deserves the most credit for the Cavs' success this year. Now, you don't have to do percentages of like this deserves 10% of the credit. This deserves 50% of the credit. Let's do slices. Who deserves the biggest slice of the credit pie for the Cavs 45-10 start? And I'll give you like some options. Like, is it Kenny Atkinson taking over a head coach? Is it just, like you said, the year from hell last year with the injuries that happened? Is it just health being a factor? So God gets the biggest slice of the pie, but more specifically, like the continuity that the roster has, specifically your core 4 being in place. Is it the depth that you can go 10 deep and these guys aren't playing crazy minutes, you're able to do it that way? Or is it just simply the talent got better and the 3 all-stars that were named this year just have kind of carried you? How would you dice up the credit pie slices?
I think the core 4 being who they are and playing the way they're playing is the number one impetus. I know a lot of people want to give Kenny a lot of credit, and he deserves a lot of credit. He's going to win Coach of the Year, and if he doesn't, I will fall out of my chair. But the thing I actually give Kenny the most credit for is believing in the roster he agreed to coach. Because so many people spent the entirety of last summer trying to change the Cavs, get them more conventional, break up the two small guards, break up the two bigs. And Kenny saw that group and was like, "Wait, these four dudes are amazing. I'm down for this. I don't want to change anything. Don't trade Darius Garland or Jared Allen for Herb Jones, please." And I think that is that's in a lot of ways. Obviously, he's installed a great system, but just trusting and empowering those four guys to get back to form and be who they are. That is the Cavs' superpower. Is they have an elite ball handler on the floor for 48 minutes. And they have an elite rim protector and rim runner on the floor for 48 minutes. And, as much as, I would love to give, a big slice of pie to Ty Jerome, who's been a revelation, and to Max Strus and Dean Wade and all these helpful role players. Their job just isn't that hard. Right now.
Yeah. Play off of great players, play off of all-stars, and you'll probably see,
and they just don't have to run out any lineups that suck because those four guys are all playing so well and in such good form. I mean, I think Darius has been one of the best 2 or 3 point guards in the league this year, especially if you have to look at it's the inverse of the Knicks, where you have to look at all the per 36s because no one plays 30 minutes on this team to actually get a sense of what their stats are relative to the rest of the league. But Darius has, taken the leap. He's taken the 3-point volume that you want to see. His finishing at the rim is 8 points better than it's ever been. Evans run 3 times as many pick and rolls this season as he did last season already. All these, Donovan has really embraced moving off ball and letting other guys run the offense at the expense of his own volume. So you've just really seen all four of them click, and it just makes, I'm not saying it's not hard to be an NBA coach, but I think Kenny has such a high floor on the lineups he rolls out. Again, your team's going through one of these kind of roster reconstructions in real time. So every now and again, Tibbs is going to play a lineup if he does go into the bench at all, which I know he doesn't do much, but he's going to play a few guys where you go, "I don't know about this one, Tom. I don't know about, hope you hang on."
Yeah.
For the 5 minutes these guys are going to be out there. The Cavs just don't do that. All their lineups win right now because all of them are anchored by really, really good players. And then when they're all playing together, they're also killing teams. They're putting up 120, 125 offensive ratings and 110 defensive ratings. It's just there's not a lot of weak points. And I think the top four guys on the roster are the ones who enable that.
So here's the tough part about evaluating a team like that, because everything you said is true. I forget I looked it up earlier, but the on-offs for all four of the core four are outstanding, especially when they play together. And I guess just to clarify to anybody that doesn't know what we mean by core four, we're talking about Darius Garland, Donovan Mitchell, Evan Mobley, and Jared Allen. It's an outstanding regular season team. Potentially, the Cavs it was LeBron's
2009.
So Thierry won his first MVP. They won 66 games that season.
Their franchise record. They started their season 44-11, just for a frame of reference on how they're stacking up to this version of the Cavs.
So that team, that team gets evaluated by LeBron standards. How did you win the championship? And I'm curious about how you feel this team should be evaluated, because the 67 win team is successful by very normal margins. You won 67 of 82 games. If they say they win 67 games, and if you lose to the defending champs en route to them winning a second title, or in the finals to the team that a lot of people picked to win the finals beforehand, that can still be looked at as a successful season. What has to happen for you to be disappointed in the way the Cavs season ends? Is it officially championship or bust for this team?
Well, I think probably some of your listeners are going to roll their eyes because I'm just going to go real old man on you and say,
go ahead.
Man, as I've gotten older, especially Not to flex too hard, but my team has won a championship pretty recently. And like that did kind of meaningfully change the way I engage with the team. You know, like I've got kids, I've got a really busy day job on the side. In this podcast and this fandom is a side thing and it's a hobby. So really what do I want out of my life? I want my hobby to be fun. And when the Cavs are going to win 60 plus games, that means I'm having a lot of fun nights all year. So like at a very personal level, it's the most fun I've ever had as a Cavs fan. The pressure is not the same because you're not letting down the LeBron of it all. You know, you don't have to worry about the retention of the LeBron of it all. You don't have to. There's just a lot of weight, and that's coming from a guy who really is quite a huge fan of LeBron, but it's just a different experience. You know, you're almost in service of him as opposed to just being a fan of your team. You know, you have the weight of it, the expectations. So I'm definitely having the most fun I've ever had. At this point, I have definitely changed my expectations. I just don't believe in title or bust because I just think the league is too good. First off, for anyone to be title or bust, because the top 4 teams, anyone could beat anyone. I think New York could beat the Cavs. They could beat the Celtics if they have a great season. Like I think most people have the Knicks in a tier lower than the Cavs right this second. It's not a ridiculous idea that they could get to the finals. It's just not, like, because this league is bananas right now. Yeah, my expectations have changed insofar as going into the year, I would have told you I'm happy to get there to the conference finals. I want to get to the finals. I do. And I'll say I will be disappointed at the end outcome if they don't win a championship, because I think if they beat Boston, they can win a championship. I mean, if you get to the NBA finals, you can win a championship. That's just as simple of a statement as you can make. So I'm at the point now where I'll be bummed, but that won't losing in the conference finals to a team as good as Boston will not ruin the season for me, but very little things could at this point. And I probably represent a very small minority of Cavs fans who probably are feeling a little more title or bust.
Yeah. I was talking about this over the weekend with someone that, like, the Celtics put such a weird weight on whoever plays them, you know, like, to your point, the Knicks could beat the Celtics, which would be looked at as like, oh my gosh, we beat the Celtics, and still not like accomplish the ultimate goal. And the Cavs could end up doing the same thing. It's like really the only team that could beat the Celtics and still enjoy the happiness of like winning the title. If that is like, if the Cavs go ahead and lose to the Thunder, obviously that's different. Or if they beat the Thunder, then they get to experience both. But the only team, like the Thunder, can beat the Celtics and then also get to celebrate the championship. Just like coinciding. Yeah, like we don't have a tough series waiting for us afterwards.
It must be nice to play in the Midwest, you know, like that conference full of 46 win teams. Yeah, couldn't be us, Andrew.
Couldn't be us. We're fighting it out through a gauntlet here in the East. Look at us. Yeah, everyone's talking about how tough the West was, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So
they've got contenders trading their best players mid-season, Carter, like for no reason whatsoever.
Couldn't be us. Couldn't be us. We're built different on the Eastern Conference.
Yes, in the Eastern Conference, the East Coast, maybe
not the East Coast.
A different conversation. As I discovered that Ohio,
you scumbag, you thought we were in Central Time.
I just
coastal elite.
You got it. So that the funny part about what you just said, and our listeners know this, I'm so ignorant when it comes to like anything past the Hudson River. Like I know
you're a coastal elite. Andrew.
I don't know if I even told if I did this with you guys, or if I've done it so many times that it's just it's basically like it's New York. I think Jersey is over there, and then I think there's also Pennsylvania, the middle. I think there's Vegas, and then there's California. Like that's my map of America for the most part.
Biggest city in the country and the smallest perspective.
Clearly,
New York.
Can I ask about LeBron for a second? Because
sure.
It's a weird segue, but the fact that they're doing all this without LeBron, does that mean more to you?
Oh, it's
like
so
what does
special,
it mean,
dude? It's so
speak
special.
To that.
I remember my former editor of Fear the Sword at SB Nation, David Zavak, used to just say, you know, for the first time he was gone, and then the second time he was gone, was the Cavs have to find a way to form some kind of identifiable culture that doesn't include LeBron James. And they've done it. They have figured it out. I remember when he left the second time, I got on our podcast and I said to Justin, I'm just really afraid of being like the Sacramento Kings Eastern Conference edition. This team that's just never special again, that just kind of languishes near the bottom of the league and then gets decent for like a year and a half, then drops back down again. I was really afraid of that. And, the road to it was pretty like fraught, everyone makes fun of the Darius Garland pick because, they already had Colin Sexton and who was, their like foundational young guy. He was the Kyrie return. He was the trade return for Kyrie Irving. Everyone made fun of them for trading for Jared Allen when they already had Andre Drummond. Like, how many centers do you need? And then they go draft Evan Mobley. And then they go trade for Lauri Markkanen, which everyone laughed at. And then they flip all those guys for Donovan Mitchell. Like, this was not like, I by comparison, I think the Thunder's strategy of just like acquire assets, draft, do good. Like that was kind of that was their road. That is like a very conventional road. I think the Cavs had a bit more of a winding road, and they also just had to get lucky. The Rockets had to turn down Jared Allen in the James Harden trade, so they had to route him to the Cavs. The Rockets again. Thank you, Houston. They had to pick Jalen Green over Evan Mobley. Like I just don't know if any of this stuff happens if these outcomes don't align just so. But now they're in a spot where they're reaping the rewards of like having some clarity of purpose and like having a fundamental belief in like what their team is going to be. And that goes all the way up to not blowing it up this summer after, Shams and I think it was ESPN dropped the hit piece right after they lost to Boston about how messed up the culture was and how Darius Garland was going to ask out if Donovan re-signed and all this stuff. And they're like, we're pretty sure we're good. And we just think we had a bad year. And like that kind of like organizational belief, a lot of teams don't have that. A lot of teams do just kind of overreact or underreact. Like they've just kind of made the right choice at each step of the journey. And it's really freaking satisfying. And that's why I'm having so much fun.
Yeah. It's something I wondered about, like when your whole franchise, like I'm curious about this with Golden State, when Steph finally retires, what happens to that franchise?
It'll be different because LeBron left us twice. So there's
That's
always
true, obviously, but like
you want to prove to your ex that you're doing good.
Right. Right. Well, so like the Spurs kind of went through that like they were a mid team for a few years with those Aldridge, Kawhi teams that extended the run, and then they really trading Kawhi, and then it was the DeRozan Aldridge teams that made us like, oh, San Antonio is no longer the thing to be feared anymore. And obviously, best wishes to Wemby, but they may have started. I was trying to remember where I had heard that syndrome that he has or that diagnosis. I remembered we DJ Zula, one of our film guys, told me it was when Chris Bosh had it. Like he had a much more severe version of it that ended his career. But yeah, it's scary stuff, and you hope he recovers fully. But like they were able to find another great player to build around and then rebuild their culture. It's why I was curious about the Cavs also being able to do this,
That's the thing with the Cavs also is, as Donovan is great. There's no disputing it. I mean, all of his metrics are the best they've ever been on all the catch-alls and stuff like that. But, most people have him like in the top 10 periphery, but the thing that makes the team special isn't Donovan. It is the four, and all of them cover each other's weaknesses. All of them, amplify each other. And, I feel like I'm going to feel the way about this team that like 04 Pistons fans felt about that team, where it's like, yeah, we don't have a true super duper star, a true number one or number two in the entire world that is taking us to where we want to go. We've got four great players, and we are going to ride them, as far as they'll take us.
Look, the best case scenario is it's to your point about like the '04 Pistons is the ultimate version of it, but there's also like there's a world where they're their last year Celtics where
the Celtics are the blueprint. Like
how many years did we say like you can't win something with Tatum and Brown, but then you put the right 4 or 5 or 6 pieces around them, and that's not a team that you identify as because Tatum and Brown were great was why they won the title. It was the sum being better than the whole, or one or two great players.
Well, here's what I think is interesting is I don't feel like anyone really, I think everyone took this lesson from Boston of big wings and threes. That was like the lesson, but there wasn't a lot of like roster constructions lessons learned where it's like, that team built themselves in a way where they have enough top end depth, not depth at the 9, 10, 11 spot, but the top end depth where their best 5 guys all could be a star on a given night that they could afford Tatum not being a true super duper star. He could have entire series where he was just okay and they could win. And I do feel like that has been a big change in this league where it used to be get 2-3 guys who are elite, fill in with whatever you can, try to find good players, but fill in with whatever you can. And now I think it's like, you can't play dudes who can't play. Like if you got guys who can't hang out there, it's devastating. So like the Celtics hit both ends of the spectrum where they have a guy who can be a top end guy on every night, and they just don't play any scrubs. And that I feel like is, if the Cavs are replicating the Boston model, it's not on the X's and O's. It's in that like heavy, like top heavy roster construction without sacrificing kind of the mid-level depth.
Yeah, you can't play dudes who can't play. The Tom Thibodeau philosophy that
he won't.
Oh, he won't. Believe me, I'm fully expecting. We'll see if like Josh Hart missed tonight's game. He's runner's knee. And Anunoby didn't play either. So we'll see. I'm fully expecting them both to be ready to play magically for this game against Cleveland, which we should talk about before we get out of here. So Knicks play the Cavs first time since November, actually, maybe even October
28th.
So October, Jesus, it was that. It's really been October since the last time the Knicks played the
score before we went live to just like refresh myself.
Well, so I gotta be honest, nothing matters from that game. If I remember right, Karl-Anthony Towns took 7 shots, which was less than
4 of 8. 4 of 8 from the field, 1 of 2 from 3, and took 4 free throws.
We were still learning about this new toy that we have, and then the next game, the Knicks played the Heat, and he had 40-something points, and I was like, oh, we should pass him the ball more. And like they were still learning at the time, but a lot has changed for the Knicks since then. Initially, what scares you the most about the Knicks going into this matchup, if anything?
I gotta say, like I mean, there's always the Josh Hart of it all, because I just don't think they have. That's just not a strength for them. Like that kind of like that. They don't do a good job on these great rebounding wings that can kind of crash in. That's not the way they prefer to play. And even in that early season game, the Knicks did drag that offense into the mud. They only scored 110. The reason they won is they held the Knicks to 104. So I'm going to remain interested to see how equipped the Knicks are to just gum up the Cavs offense. Something that this team, the few kind of chinks in the armor for this team offensively has been ball pressure. And like guys like Deuce McBride are just like built in a lab to annoy Darius and Donovan. Guys like Hart who play, super physically at the point of attack. That's why it's like guys like Mikal Bridges, I'm just not that worried about because he's a fundamental defender. I don't find him to be a horribly forceful defender. OG is the best Donovan Mitchell defender in the league, other than Lou Dort. I feel like he always gives him trouble going back to when he was in Toronto. So like they are a team that's well equipped to challenge the Cavs at that point of attack. And then, it just puts a lot of pressure on Mobley and Allen to operate well out of the short roll. And even in that game, Mobley goes 7 of 12 for 17 points. Allen goes 5 for 7. Like, wasn't a ton of volume, They combined for 19 field goal attempts. Darius and Donovan combined for 36. And I do think that's probably a good, shot outcome distribution for the Knicks, because that means that the Cavs aren't kind of getting the machine revved up. It's just a lot of like attacking drop coverage and trying to hit floaters and middies, which like the Cavs can do. And like they might score 115, 120 that way because the offense is that good. But I do think the Knicks on defense still have the propensity to bait the Cavs into some bad habits.
Well, so the interesting thing about that is the Knicks play a ton of drop, specifically with Cat. They've started to switch a little bit, and like I've wondered if there's just like a different schematic shift that Tibbs is going to go to closer to the playoffs when he wants to like use something that works for now, and then closer to the playoffs, I'll figure out something else. And recently he started to either switch more, and like if Cat's on an island alone, fine. Like he did it against Atlanta right before the break, and it actually worked. In the game they just played a few hours ago against Chicago, they put him on a wing and took him off of Vucevic, and they put Precious on Vuce, and it's a schematic shift that worked out. It's just like taking Cat off of centers so that way you can't bring him into the action as much on the pick and roll.
Not as easy with the Cavs who play.
So that's where the Cavs create such a problem, where not only do you have one elite ball handler that can get into the paint and take advantage of drop coverage, you have two that made the all-star team and do it at an elite level. The rebounding thing is a thing I'm hoping the Knicks can take advantage of, and I would hope the Knicks specifically in this game. Cat, he's an automatic 12, 13 rebounds a night, especially on the defensive glass. But I mean, because he's a floor spacer for the most part, the offensive glass is a little different. So I'd be curious there.
If I'm wrong, I haven't watched the Knicks obviously nearly as closely as you. I know at the beginning of the year, like the offensive rebound rate was kind of in the tank, and it was like, oh crap, did they give up their whole identity to do this? They're up to 9th.
Yeah.
Like, have they just recaptured that, and are they just good at it again?
It's a mix of everything. So I remember coming on your show before the season and saying the shift that they're making. Ironically, we had that conversation, I believe, before the Knicks traded for Karl-Anthony Towns.
Yeah, I think
so the thought was they're going to prioritize their first shot. They're going to try to be a little bit more efficient. That their top 5 offenses or top 10 offenses are great. But if you're bottom 10 in effective field goal percentage, it's very easy to beat come playoff time. You box out, and a team can very easily beat that. The Knicks are going to prioritize their first shot. And for largely the first 2.5 months of the season, when the Knicks were winning, it was these otherworldly offensive performances where they didn't miss for 2.5 quarters and they're up 30. And when they lose, it's, they're off tonight, and it's one and done because they still haven't, found a good scheme to make it work that way. The addition of Precious Achiuwa coming back has created some bench lineups and some Cat Precious lineups that have allowed them to still have an elite rebounder in the paint when Cat is on the wing or taking a 3 on offense. And OG Anunoby's been out recently. I believe he's missed 6 or 7 games. And as a result, Precious has been starting.
Not the most forceful rebounder.
Not the most forceful, no, not at all. But Precious, as much as he destroys their spacing, what he can do is offensive rebound. So while that number is going up, they're still able to the lineup is playable. Precious at the 4 next to Cat. I wish Tibbs wouldn't play Josh Hart as well, because then teams they flat out ignore Precious Achiuwa. Like he goes and stands in the corner, and we saw it that like the Celtics, Luke Cornett was supposed to guard Precious. There's like, okay, I'm just going to guard the rim instead. Like if you want to, we'll concede the Precious Achiuwa corner.
Can I tell you the thing I want to see?
What do you want to see?
With that in mind, I want to see them, especially with one big lineups. I want to see them put DeAndre Hunter on Cat and just mess with the dribble. If he tries to bury you in the post, we'll help. We'll help off the Preciouses of the world. We'll help off of Josh Hart if we have to and get into rotation. But like, we are not going to let you slice us and dice us with a Brunson Cat pick and roll.
Yeah.
We're just gonna switch that, and then we'll tag out on the back end. Your thoughts?
I think a lot of teams tend to do that, to be honest. What we've seen work a lot against the Knicks this year, specifically these switch heavy teams, is they'll put a wing on Cat.
Cavs love switching right now, way more than they switched under JB.
And the tough part is that the Cavs have so many options. Like if you wanted to put Mobley on Cat and then still put Jared Allen on Josh Hart, and then he's just a roamer. If you'd like, the fascinating thing is normally teams are fine leaving Josh Hart open, but his history against the Cavs actually might.
I'm not.
Yeah,
fine with that.
I was wondering if that's a little more terrifying.
Too many times,
But that's been a recipe for success. And Josh has just been he's been so much more hesitant since the calendar turned to 2025. He was hitting like close to 40% and taking 3 or 4 a game. And it's gone completely the other direction since January 1st. So I could see the Cavs pretty much doing what we're saying. They'll put a wing on Cat in certain lineups. But again, their starting 5 could just put Mobley on him or Allen on him. Then the other one guards Josh and then helps off or plays in help. They're able to still cut off his drives.
I think the other reason I like the idea of putting a wing on Cat so much is like, it just means you can just let the fives not have to close out on Cat. Like they just won't have to cover that ground, whether it's Mobley or Allen. And Hunter is not a great rebounder. He's not a crazy physical player, but like they did the Hawks successfully put him on Wemby and just said, hang in there, brother.
Yeah,
we think it'll work for us in the net, and that's like the number one like change schematically that I'm really excited to see in this matchup.
Well, I'm gonna say the Knicks need to hit threes in this game. I mean, you tell me, have the Cavs been able to survive if they're conceding the 3 a ton, or is that? I mean, like that's the NBA today.
Man. Here's the thing, man. Like, and this is like kind of like it's kind of a stupid thing to say, but like they're still shooting 39% from 3, and they're so good at the rim. Their shot profile is perfect. And neither of these teams are crazy high volume 3-point teams. Cavs certainly are up there. They're up to 4th in 3-point attempt rate for 100 possessions, which is definitely tilted up since Max Strus kind of returned to the lineup, which makes sense because he takes 100 of them a game. I think that the reality is the Cavs can make the same amount as the Knicks and take 10 more and still hang, Yeah. Like the numbers game really plays in their favor with regard to 3. And I noticed the Knicks still aren't shooting threes at all.
They're not. Like, I wish they'd shoot more. Believe me, I wish they'd shoot more. Part of it, we have no idea.
I'm going to flip it to you and like just ask, like, do you think the Knicks have to get up 43-point attempts?
I wish they'd do it. I wish they'd do it every game, to be honest.
In this matchup specifically, though, do you think they need to do that to like be able to just keep up?
The Cavs have so many options in my mind to cut off the rim that the way you're going to neutralize their defensive game plan is if you're bringing them away from the rim. Like the way the Knicks have had the offense that they've had this season is maximizing the 5-out spacing as best as possible. And you do that if Cat is a threat, if Anunoby's a threat, if Bridges is a threat, then you're getting past the first line of defense, and the rim is more open than it used to be. I'm very curious to see in a matchup like this with multiple rim protectors potentially on the court at the same time how they compete. But if you're hitting threes, at least that is something you can turn to. And look, the Knicks do generate a ton of open looks, especially in the corners. It's just if they're not falling, that second gear is a little more difficult to find at times. Sometimes you just got to get in transition too, which the Knicks are lethal in transition, but they're not as much of a team that gets out in transition. Look, too many people have been telling me that they're 0-5 against the top 3 teams in the sport. I'd love for that. I just love for to be in the fourth quarter thinking it could be 1-5. Like I'm not going to say.
I bet you would. Can I say real quick? Can I soapbox for a second?
Yeah, of course. Now we're running long, but go ahead, take your time.
For all the moaning about like offensive, every offense looking the same in the league, and from pundits and casual fans who don't pay that close of attention. Like, all you got to do is look at these two teams. The two best offenses in the league. One of whom is fourth in the league in 3-point attempt rate, playing two traditional bigs.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have the team that's 5 out, that's like 26th in the league in 3-point rate.
Oh, other way. Yeah.
Like they couldn't be playing more off type basketball. Like, you would think the Cavs would be the chuggy, let's pound the rock inside kind of offense. And you would think the Knicks would just be bombing 53s a game. But like, just goes to show there's so many ways up the mountain. Both these teams are dope offenses. I'm really excited for this game.
It's like the Knicks use their spacing and their 5 out to get better look at the rim. Yeah, it's literally what they're, especially with Brunson, who's just, I mean, his best games this year have been when he's been able to get downhill and there's not like multiple guys being thrown at him. So, we'll see. Look, I am excited for the game. I will say that. I'm very annoyed at the fact that people keep saying that they haven't beaten a team in the top 3 yet. And there's this other part. So, well, I obviously Knicks in 5 until further notice, as far as I'm concerned. I will say the other part of this, and this is how we'll wrap up today, is that it's partially Knicks Film School's fault. So we partnered with a sports bar in New York City called T Squared Social. The two T's are Timberlake and Tiger. Shout out Tiger Woods and Justin Timberlake. It's one of the best sports bars I've ever been to. It probably is the best one in the city. And the Knicks haven't won the last 5 watch parties that we've done there. So there's a bit of a Knicks Film School curse. And guess when the next one is, Carter? When people are watching this, it is tonight against the Cleveland Cavaliers. So be there, BT squared. We're doing trivia ahead of time, though. So if you want to come for the trivia and like get a drink and then leave before the game because you don't want to be part of the curse, please do. Can I do some trivia with you before we get out of here?
Absolutely.
So people have an idea what trivia will look like. So I'm going to give you 30 seconds on the clock. So the question is, name as many as 5 players that played at least 50 games for both the Cavs and the Knicks. Are you ready? 30 seconds on the clock.
I'm ready.
Alrighty. Okay, go.
Walt Frazier. Did he get
Correct.
to 50?
He got to 50. 66 for the Cavs.
Channing Frye.
Channing Frye, 180 for the Cavs, 137 for the Knicks. That's 2.
Did Kyle Korver ever spend any time in New York?
Never played for the Knicks, but keep going. 15 seconds.
Oh gosh. J.R. Smith.
J.R. Smith and Iman Shumpert. Well done.
Timofey Mozgov.
I think you got it. Hold on. Did he get to 50 for the Knicks? That's the big question. Say another one just in case.
I'm out.
Okay. Okay. So that's the end of the time. So you either got 4 of 5 or 5 of 5. We got to find Mozgov. Timofey Mozgov played 34 games for the Knicks. At the buzzer. The other candidates, Gerald Wilkins, who played 500 or so games for the Knicks, 162 for the Cavs. Damian Dotson just misses, so I won't say him.
Damian Dotson.
Yeah. Derrick Rose just misses, only played 16 for the Cleveland Cavaliers in that infamous season.
What a run it was.
What a run, indeed. And to your credit, this seems like a very difficult list to find.
What difficult?
So Jose Calderon would have been.
Oh my God.
Acceptable answer.
Still in the Cavs organization, by the way. You see him every time you go to a game.
You got the big ones though. Channing Frye, Iman Shumpert, J.R. Smith. And the Walt Frazier one, if you didn't get, was going to be like Knicks fans are going to yell about it because obviously like the one of the 3 greatest Knicks ever, being a trivia answer.
I led to my audience.
Well done. You knew what to do. You understood the assignment, and you got 4 out of 5, which is a good answer. So congratulations.
Thanks. I'm bad at trivia, so I feel good.
Listen, I hope it's the only win the Cavs get over the next 24 hours. Personally,
absolutely not, brother.
So NBA. So both of these teams had to go from New York. Did they just schedule the Cavs in New York, like to play Brooklyn, so that way they have the same travel as the Knicks?
I literally looked it up to be like, there's no way both these teams are like they're like flying out of they're flying out of the same airport right now.
Are they really? Okay.
No, I'm making that up. But
that would have been something.
might
If
as
they're
well
like passing each other on the tarmac. They have the same flight, the same travel to play the same game at the same time.
It's the fairest it's ever been.
It is. So no complaining. We had a back-to-back last night. Yeah,
you're on the road. Yeah, you're on the road. You always have that complaint.
I guess. We'll see. Well, Carter, you had a road game here, and I think you performed outstandingly. Even with trivia, 4 out of 5 is not a bad thing. And Knicks fans, if you want to partake in trivia, join us at T-Squared at 6:15 Eastern before the Knicks take on this Cleveland Cavaliers team. Be there or be T-Squared. Carter, before you get out of here, please let the fine folks at home know where they can find you and all the work that you do.
You don't need to find me. Just find our podcast, Chase Down Pod, on Twitter. And Blue Sky and Instagram and anywhere you want to find it, and on any podcast platforms. And then we do all our live streams on the Cavs official YouTube channel. So just look up Cleveland Cavaliers and you will find us.
Every time you have me on, I have to toe the line of professional and reckless because it's the Cavs official YouTube channel. Like, I don't know how much I'm allowed to, like, whenever I go on like a Philly podcast, I know I'm there to cause havoc. Yeah. But with you guys, I'm like, but like the whole Cavs are responsible for this.
Yeah, so. I think, we've never been scolded for a guest.
Okay, good.
I think we're more likely to get ourselves in trouble than to have a guest get themselves in trouble. But I appreciate your mindfulness, brother.
Of course. I want an invite back is the goal for every one of those.
Always, we love you.
Of course. Carter, it's good to see you. Thank you so much for joining me. And thank you to everybody for joining me for another edition of the Knicks Film School pregame show. If you dug it, please head over to iTunes, drop a 5-star rating and a review. I'll be back on Saturday previewing Knicks Celtics. Hopefully it's after a win and not headed into a potential 0-7 against the top 3 teams in the NBA. But win or lose, I'll be here. So tune in for that. Until next time, thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. Enjoy the game tonight. See you at T-Squared. And I'll speak with you soon. Peace.